I am like, can't believing these first two presentations have been off the chart. I hope everyone is getting this information. Oh, by the way, Suzanne, you are a speed talker. I hope our translators were able to keep up with that great information. Also, if you didn't notice, these slides that you'll be getting, this will be a perfect customer overview to conduct on your Zoom technology to help you build. And don't forget the products, the Isochrome, the Level 90, the Advanced Fiber. We're focused in on specific things based on specific markets. So once again, we know this blood sugar area is a big market around the world. Quick things that you picked up. I hope you got carbs are made up of starch, sugar, and fiber. And of that, did you pick up that there are natural sugars and there are added sugars? And you need to really understand this. Now, basically, you saw things that like cereal was 30 grams, orange juice was 30 grams of sugar. One capful of isotonics is 2 grams of sugar. So put together that 2 grams of naturally added sugar to go with the high nutritional content that's in that 3.3 total grams of nutrients coming into your system. Amazing. I just love that. I got to tell you, Suzanne, I picked up a few things. I'll always think of you. No roller coaster here. Want even Steven when it comes to blood sugar. Change your food and change your mood. These are things everybody should pick up. And your gut is the processing center. And that's a great depiction of what's happening internally. I also want to just remember is that when you're talking to people that have challenges with stress and high blood sugar, we're seeing most of the weight coming around the belly area. So again, these are all things that are so good to pick up. I also love the fact that sugar interferes with the immune system. Did you pick that up? Again, all of this is happening. We're learning about this. I love this. And you know what? I have to tell you, Isochrome is a product that needs to be sold more. What an amazing product that we deliver. Coupled with what? Level 90, amazing for people that have a concern of diabetes within their world. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what's ahead. Well, first time ever that I'm going to hear this next speaker, and I'm excited to because I've heard nothing but good things. Now, this person, this gentleman has had a huge personal story, and I want to bring this up because he overcame not only his weight problem at 390 pounds, and ladies and gentlemen, I used to move people for a living. I know what it is to go up against a 300-pounder, a 320-pounder, and a 340-pounder. But when you think about the size of 390 pounds, I would expect there would be some depression following it. Well, this man has overcome that, and both weight and in health. Now, let's talk about Dr. Brian Griffin Brown, okay? He has 38 years experience in the healthcare industry. He has his doctorate in nursing practice. He is a board-certified family practice, psychiatry, advanced bioidentical hormone therapy. He is also currently the director of an integrative medicine clinic, and he's a best-selling author, The Happiness Hijackers. Please help me welcome to the stage Dr. Brian Griffin Brown.
Thank you, Dennis, for that generous welcome. I'm privileged to be here today to speak to you guys about stress and mental health. And as Dennis said, you know, I have 22 years of experience in psychiatry by itself. In the past 12 years, I switched gears and started doing functional medicine. So I stopped prescribing pharmaceutical medications and started moving into a natural treatment modalities, and discovered Nutrimetrics as a company for health professionals, Isotonic for non-health professionals, as one of the hallmark companies that I work with in my office and in my practice. And I'm going to talk to you today about some of the things that I've seen throughout my practice that have benefited not only me, but also benefit my clients. So let's go ahead and get started. Standard FDA disclaimer, these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and the products that will be discussed here are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. I want to start right out of the chute with a stress survey that has been being conducted online with U.S. citizens, U.S. adults, since 2007. And every year since 2007 through 2019, the stress scores on their self-rating have averaged about the same. Last year, for example, the average rating was 4.9 on a scale of 1 to 10. This year, and I don't think it'll be any surprise to anyone, people are more stressed. And that score for the first time in 12 years actually increased to 5.4. Statistically speaking, that is a significant increase from 4.9 to 5.4. We won't go into the logistics of that, but when people were asked why they felt like they were under more stress, they cited poor sleep, work pressure, and what I call the spaghetti and meatballs analogy or dilemma that we all deal with, where we pile too much spaghetti and meatballs on our plate and things start falling off the edges sooner or later. So what is stress and how do we define it? Stress is simply, can be broken down into a simple equation of stress equals pressure that's greater than the resources to be able to deal with that pressure. Another way of looking at this may be that stress is equal to a person's perception of the pressure that's around them, which is greater than their adaptive capacity or their resources to be able to deal with that stressor. Regardless of how you look at it, it has to do with resources available, this adaptive reserve capacity to be able to deal with stress. And I'm going to talk more about that as we go through the presentation. But the takeaway here is know that stress is a total body issue. It's not just a psychiatric issue. It's not just a mental health issue. It's an entire body issue. Does it have psychiatric or mental health consequences? Absolutely, yes. But does it affect the entire body? As we heard from the previous speaker, the answer is a resounding yes. And I'm going to go into more detail about that as we move forward. As we move forward, we need to understand a few terms, the terminology around stress. So there's one term that's called distress. Distress is this negative stress that's potentially overwhelming and perhaps out of control and leads to either mental health disorders or physical health disorders, which ends up landing you in a doctor's office and getting treated for something that probably could have been avoided in the first place. And then there's this word called eustress, and eustress is this positive stress that drives us forward, pushes us forward, motivates us, gives us meaning to life. I'll give you an anecdotal story of things I've noticed since the global pandemic with COVID-19, in that my extroverted clients prior to COVID-19, they flourished because, let's face it, the world is an extroverted world, and introverts were in a state of distress during that time. Ironically, when we went into quarantine and we went into lockdown, my via telemedicine and telehealth that we were doing at the time and still doing, actually, my introverted clients, all of a sudden they're flourishing. They're smiling for the first time in years. And I'm like, what's different? And they're like, well, I don't have to be around people, and I'm actually enjoying that. I'm actually enjoying working from home. So on the flip side of that, the extroverts who are now forced into quarantine are actually more depressed. So they have moved from a state of eustress into a state of distress, and the introverts have moved into a state of eustress versus distress. So what I want to say is one person's eustress is another person's distress, and it's situational. So we need to understand that. The second term we need to understand is the word stressors. Stressors is simply used in general medical practice among all the disciplines, as well as in psychiatry. In psychiatry, stressors refers to these contributing factors that lead to psychiatric symptoms or psychiatric conditions. In general medical practice, they're contributing factors that actually lead to medical symptoms and medical conditions. The key takeaway here is when you are exposed to stressors over a long period of time, it becomes very harmful, not only mentally, but physically to the body, because it's a systemic problem. And then the last two terms that we're going to discuss are acute stress versus chronic stress. Acute stress is this biosurvival mechanism that Mother Nature created for all of us. Now, the fact of the matter is 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, our ancestors might have had to run from a bear or a lion or a saber-toothed tiger. Today, we don't need to run from bears or lions. We just simply don't need that survival instinct, where our survival instinct may come in for acute stress at this point in our lives is if you're driving and a child runs out in the road, and that creates an acute stress response and you need to swerve out of the way. Or acute stress is a person in oncoming traffic swerves in front of you and you need to get out of the way. Or someone is pursuing you when you're walking and you're out exercising and you notice that somebody's following you. That can create an acute stress response. So those are there for basic survival, but they're meant to be very short-lived, say 10 to 20 minutes in duration. The problem becomes when you get a chain linking effect of acute stressor to acute stressor to acute stressor, and we get this chronic stress, and this biosurvival mechanism becomes prolonged and protracted, and it becomes something it was never intended to be. And it starts shutting down systems within the body, within the brain, within the digestive system, within the heart. People will develop high heart rate. They'll develop high blood pressure. They'll have trouble sleeping. They'll start gaining weight. So chronic stress is not good. Let's look more specifically at what symptoms of chronic stress can be. And this picture points out a really important point here, and that this guy is literally blowing his stack, as we say here in the United States. He's losing his cool. So being easily agitated or irritable, stressed and moody, those are indicators of chronic stress. Other indicators are feeling overwhelmed, low self-esteem, difficulty relaxing, feeling lonely or depressed. And this last one is stress eating. As we heard our previous speaker talk about and teach us, she went into great detail about this and why we crave salty foods and fatty foods and sweet foods. But I put that here under emotional indicators because stress eating is an emotional indicator that something is out of balance, and we've moved from an acute phase to something that's unhealthy and more chronic. When we look at cognitive indicators of stress, we think of things like constantly worrying, racing thoughts, forgetfulness, disorientation, poor concentration and memory, inability to focus, mental slowness, poor judgment, pessimism, and procrastination. And then we look at physical indicators of stress, and most everybody in the audience today can relate to this. We're speaking specifically about low energy, head discomfort, muscle discomfort or muscle tension throughout the body, digestive challenges, clenching our jaws or biting our teeth together, weight gain, decreased immune function, insomnia, poor sleep, lack of sexual function, nervousness, and sensitivities. And when I say sensitivities here, specifically, I see the entire gamut of sensitivities in the office clinically, from people that are sound sensitive to loud noises. Some people are sensitive to light. Some people are sensitive to smells. That's actually a very common one. And then a lot of people are sensitive to chemicals that touch their skin or chemicals that they ingest into their digestive system that they're either drinking or they're eating. So sensitivities can run the gamut. And generally, if you see one sensitivity, you're going to see multiple sensitivities. Now, this is a beautiful picture. I've been to Africa many times. I've been on photo safaris. I'm an amateur photographer, and I love taking pictures. Zebras are hugely common over there. It's like you see one zebra and you get tired of seeing them because they're just everywhere. But every now and then you get to see a zebra in action, and it's running from a lion. And it's one of those rare things that you get to see, and that you know that animal is in fight or flight response at that point. Well, we go into fight or flight response just like animals do. And remember, it's that old survival mechanism, never meant to be chronic, only meant to be acute, short-lived, 10 to 20 minutes. But when you're in that survival mode, that fight or flight mode, you're not concentrating or interested on reproduction. You're your energy gets moved or shunted into your muscles, away from your digestive system, away from thinking globally to thinking more narrow and tunnel vision, so you can find the escape route. It moves blood away from centers towards your muscles and towards your heart, so you can hyperoxygenate to run and flee. It's not interested in fighting pathogens or healing or laying down new healthy bone or laying down new healthy muscles. So this slide brings out some important points. When we move into a chronic state, we start shutting down all of these systems, and it's not good for the human body to have this. So you're beginning to see this picture that I'm painting, that stress is not just a mental health issue, it's an entire body issue. Hans Selye was a researcher that focused on stress throughout the bulk of his career, and he broke stress down into 3 categories: the arousal phase, the adaptation or adaptogen phase, and the exhaustion phase. In the arousal phase, you get this increase in adrenaline, think fight or flight. So we're hyper aroused in the sense that we have all this adrenaline on board. And that previous slide that I showed you is the result of that adrenaline being flooded into the body. And then we have very low or minimal cortisol response. We do get a little uptick for reasons of survival, but it's very minimal. Then we move into the adaptation phase. So stress continues. It's no longer acute. It's moving into the early chronic phase, and then we're adapting. So then we start to see those cortisol levels, so those corticosteroid levels start elevating and going up. And that's not healthy for you. It starts putting central obesity around the middle and around the hips, around the organs inside your body, and it makes you unhealthy. And you start having impaired glucose metabolism and decrease in endocrine function as a whole. And then we move into exhaustion. If the stress is left unaddressed, we moved into this exhaustion phase, and it becomes very degenerative. You may have heard the term adrenal fatigue. Traditional medical practice doesn't like to address adrenal fatigue because they don't have a magic bullet for diagnosing it or treating it. But on the functional medicine, the integrative medicine side, we understand it very well because we understand this stepwise process that occurs. Now, I want to take this one step further and show you this slide. It's a bit busy, but I show you this slide to let you know this, that in Hans Selye's time, up until just recent years, we really thought of stress response as affecting the hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal glands, or the HPA axis. Now we understand that it's much more comprehensive than that. We knew that it was whole body, but we didn't know how whole body it was. And now we understand it's hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal, also thyroid, also gonadal, and also gut. Why do we throw gut in there with this endocrine system? Well, the gut is controlled by all of these hormones in the endocrine system. So is your heart, so is your brain, so is your breathing, so is your muscle mass production, so is fat distribution. So when you start seeing issues in these areas, it's a domino effect where once this system starts struggling and shutting down, the other systems follow suit over time. I show you this slide to draw your attention to that pinkish purple line that goes through the middle of the graph. Really important to pay attention to this, because if you notice, moving from left to right, on the left-hand side is the early stage of stress, and our body is beginning to build an adaptation to that. And it's starting to say, okay, we need to deal with this. These are the resources that we have to pull from to fix this problem. And we do. We're able to adapt. We're able to overcome this stress. And then you notice that pink line, that pinkish purple line, starts going down, and over time it drastically takes a drop. And when that occurs, our ability to deal with stress also fades away, and it takes a ravaging toll on the body, and we move into that exhaustion phase. So what is this deal with cortisol and why it's important? Why is it important? Cortisol is important because there's no one that's in the listening audience today that would have been able to be here and gotten out of bed this morning had they not had cortisol involved. Cortisol follows beautiful rhythmic pattern in that about 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 for some people, before you wake up every morning, your cortisol starts rising, and it needs to rise. So by the time you wake up, it's at its peak, or it should be at its peak. When it's out of balance, it stays high for too long. And I'll talk about that in a moment when I talk about some therapeutics that we can use to address these issues. But cortisol should be at its peak when you wake up, and it goes to a peak level to raise your blood sugar and raise your blood pressure, so you actually have the functional ability to get out of bed in the morning. Now, the flip side of that is when you overmake cortisol and it stays high for too long, you can start interfering with sleep. But even worse than that, you start interfering with normal hormone production. There's a process called pregnenolone steal. You don't need to worry about that. But when you rob from pregnenolone to force or to produce an over excess of cortisol, you're no longer able to produce progesterone. You don't produce DHEA. You don't produce testosterone. You don't produce estrogen. So all your sex hormones go out of balance, and it makes it very difficult to have a normal, healthy, functioning life. And sex hormones are there not just for sexuality and reproduction and sexual health. It's there to protect your body for bone mass and muscle mass and so on and so forth. And I'll talk more about that in the aging lecture that I'll be doing this afternoon. But the bottom line is less stress equals more sex. But if you're dealing with stress and you're struggling with some sexual dysfunction because you know your hormones are out of balance, we have 2 amazing products in the Prime line, one for men called Prime Time and one for women called Prime Feminine, that actually help bring hormones back into balance for men and women respectively. So let's talk a little bit about the food. I'm not going to belabor this because the last speaker did such an amazing job at talking about this, but stress-inducing foods are refined sugars, table salt, processed foods, junk food, alcohol, and coffee. These things, these constituents right here that we put into our body willingly, this junk that we put into our body, if you have one of those smart watches that monitors your heart rate, I dare you to do a test and eat one of these things, the refined sugar, especially junk food, alcohol, coffee, and watch your heart rate go up. It's actually creating an adrenaline response in your body, which is a stress response. And your body really doesn't know the difference between that type of stress that's created by food and a lion that's chasing you. I know that seems like a weird concept, but it's true. Your body is responding physiologically as if you have something chasing you and you're needing to run away. So it's preparing you for survival. And again, as from previous slides, it's not healthy. So what foods can we eat to reduce stress? Well, I want you to think about anything you can pick, pluck, or pull. For the most part, it's healthy for you. Dark green vegetables, avocados, berries, tomatoes, nuts, plant proteins. I would even throw apples and some of your harder fruits in there are excellent for you. And we'll talk about vitamin C here in just a moment. But stress-reducing foods are your clean and green eating, anything that you can pick, pluck, or pull. So while we're on the topic of foods and food-like substances, let's talk about adaptogenic phytochemicals and herbs. A lot of them are herbs. Some of them are not herbs. Some of them are actually foods. You notice blueberries there, very adaptogenic, very high in antioxidant type activity. And I'll speak more about adaptogens here in just a moment. But the bottom line is adaptogens balance or rebalance, restore balance to the system. If you don't need it to work at that time because you're in balance, guess what? It doesn't do anything. But if your body is out of balance, it will help restore that balance. That's the beauty of adaptogens is they work wonderfully well at restoring balance. So I want to talk to you, Mona, about stress management supplements. And I use the word supplements not lightly because this doesn't mean that you do these as a substitute for a healthy lifestyle. Again, I'll talk about healthy lifestyle more in the aging portion, but we have to think of supplements as supplement to a proper lifestyle plan. And what we're going to be talking about today is isotonic vitamin C, isotonic magnesium, and isotonic B complex. So with those 3 particular constituents, as far as stress management constituents, one of the first places that they are abundantly used is in proper neurotransmitter regulation, whether it be serotonin, whether it be dopamine, whether it be melatonin, whether it be GABA. And it helps bring this sense of calm, helps promote healthy sleep, and helps increase this perception of everything is going to be okay under periods of stress. So neurotransmitters are simply natural chemicals that occur in the body, in the brain, that bring about these rebalancing in the mental health system. They help with attention, concentration, focus, mood, and stress management. Vitamin C is an essential cofactor in the metabolism of several other nutrients, such as folic acid, amino acids, and some hormones. Why do I say that vitamin C is essential? And I put that in quotes to draw your attention to it. Vitamin C is essential, and you need to understand that of vitamin C, magnesium, and the B complexes. They're all essential in that the human body can't produce them. We need to supplement with these to replenish. And vitamin C, as a side note, is typically a very fragile molecule. It's fragile in and of itself, and then it loses potency quickly once it's in the body, or if it sits out too long and ages, and it loses potency quickly if it's exposed to heat or cooking. That's why typically when you use citrus, for example, fruits that are very high in vitamin C, if you use citrus in your cooking, you really want to add them as a garnish or as a spice, as a flavoring after the food is plated. For example, if you like a little bit of lemon in your sauteed spinach, you want to add that afterwards. You don't want to cook with it because it just destroys the vitamin C. And there's a lot of good reasons why you want that vitamin C to be active as it possibly can be, so that you actually get the benefit of being able to absorb more iron from the cooked spinach. But when you combine vitamin C with beta carotene, you've got an antioxidant powerhouse that decreases oxidative stress throughout the entire body. All right, on this next slide, the link between stress and vitamin C is hands down one of the most impressive. When you're under stress, and this can be physical stress or emotional stress, it can be acute stress or it can be chronic stress. And I will tell you, I see athletes come into my practice all the time, and they're dealing with low energy. They're dealing with poor immune function, and they have destroyed their immunity because they've overstressed their body and they've depleted their C vitamins. I see people who are going through divorces, who have lost businesses, go through the same thing. And one of the first things I want to do is get vitamin C on board. I want to get magnesium on board. I want to get the B complexes on board. If I have a person that drinks frequently, that is just another form of stress. Smoking is another form of stress. If you have autoimmune conditions or you struggle with immunity and you're sick all the time, that's just another form of physical stress on the body that places a demand on depleting your vitamin C, and you want to replenish that vitamin C. So isotonic vitamin C is perfect for that. It promotes optimal immune function, provides antioxidant protection, promotes normal regulation of heart function, promotes cognitive health, reduces inflammatory responses, helps promote healthy skin and muscle health, and helps maintain healthy cholesterol levels. So isotonic C is your go-to. It's very gentle on the GI system. I've never had anybody complain that it upsets their stomach at all. And again, I use it all the time with clients. Switching gears to magnesium. Magnesium is essential for the regulation of muscle contraction. Think about the one muscle in the body that works all the time. What is that? Well, it's your heart. Your heart works continuously and it uses up the most magnesium. The catch-22 here is that when you look at magnesium levels, you draw someone's blood and you look at their levels, you need to understand that only 1% of magnesium is actually found in the blood. So when we're looking at that, you get these erroneous results that you think, okay, this person's magnesium level is perfectly fine. That's not necessarily the case. I automatically assume that a person comes in and their magnesium level is low. I just do a review of symptoms. And if they have symptoms or they have stress in their life, they go on magnesium because you need it to properly replicate your DNA in your cells, maintain blood pressure, maintain healthy insulin metabolism, as the previous speaker spoke about. The other thing that it does from a calming standpoint is melatonin actually, or magnesium, increases GABA. And we want GABA levels to be high in this prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, because that's the area of the brain that can go out of control when we're under stress and we start dealing with these mental health disorders, and our GABA levels plummet. You start replenishing magnesium and you'll see GABA levels come back up. You'll see this calming effect that will come over these people. They'll be able to relax for the first time, not only in their mind, but in their muscles, all because this GABA has gone up. And again, magnesium is another cofactor in stress that's depleted very readily under periods of stressful times. The other thing that magnesium does is it helps with the production of melatonin, which regulates your sleep-wake cycles. Isotonic magnesium, beautiful blend of magnesium citrate and magnesium glycinate. These are the best active forms of magnesium. I never see GI upset at all with this particular magnesium. I do with other magnesiums that people will default and buy when they've run out of our isotonic magnesium, and then they'll come back and they'll say, hey, I need more of that magnesium. It just worked better. It worked better because it's highly absorbable in the isotonic form, and it's got your two best magnesiums on board. But it supports healthy sleep, promotes head comfort, promotes normal muscle health and comfort, supports cardiovascular health, and promotes cognitive health and mental health performance. And who's it for? If you're under stress, you need magnesium. Regardless of what the blood levels say, yeah, there are times where you need to draw blood work, certain cardiac patients, and they need to know their magnesium levels closely. Renal patients need to know magnesium levels closely, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about people that deal with everyday stress, people that exercise a lot, people that deal with emotional stress. They've had an injury, they're subjected to physical stress. They need more magnesium on board because they're using it up like crazy. All right, let's talk about B vitamins. B vitamins are, I just love B vitamins. It's one of my most favorite topics when we're talking about emotional, mental health and stress management. They just help beautifully regulate neurotransmitters. They help regulate sleep. They help regulate hormone pathways. And again, they need to be replenished. The good news is they're water soluble. So if you don't need it, your body is going to excrete it and it'll get rid of it. But they need to be replenished on a daily basis because we use B vitamins every single day. This is an interesting study that was done that individuals as young as 19 need supplementation with activated forms of B vitamins. Why is that? It's because younger generations are increasingly under more stress. They're increasingly using over-the-counter drugs, NSAIDs, pain medications, so on and so forth, that are over the counter. They're increasingly being prescribed more prescription medications for things like depression and anxiety. And they're constantly over-consuming sugar. And I would add alcohol to this list. So when we're dealing with this age group, this younger age group, we don't need to think that they're young and healthy and they don't need B vitamins. They actually need B vitamins just as readily as somebody that's over age 30 or over age 40. So don't rule them out. Assume that if they're under stress, they're living a fast-paced lifestyle, they need to be repleting or replenishing their B vitamins. What do we look for when we look at a B complex formula? Hands down, the one thing that we look for, we want activated forms of those B vitamins. We want something that's highly absorbable. We want the correct forms of folic acid and B12. And we want to have it well-rounded enough that if we have a vegetarian or vegan in the audience, we can actually take care of their dietary needs with one supplement. So let's talk specifically about the B vitamins that we need to have in a really well-rounded B complex. Thiamine promotes normal carbohydrate metabolism and mental clarity. Riboflavin promotes detoxification through glutathione pathways, a critical detoxifier in the body, and so many people are depleted of glutathione. Riboflavin helps with that process, helps glutathione function better for detoxification. Niacinamide helps functioning healthy, keep the digestive system, skin, and nerves functioning in a healthy way. And then vitamin B5 or pantothenate helps with proper adrenal hormone function and adrenal gland function. Biotin helps with maintain steady blood sugar levels via metabolism of fats and amino acids. It also helps with healthy hair, skin, and nails. A lot of times people associate biotin with that, so I'll throw that in there. Vitamin B6 supports maintaining healthy red and white blood cells and helps support mental function. And then my two of my most favorites is methylfolate and methylcobalamin, or methyl B12. I can't say enough about methylation other than the fact that it's essential process within the body. And we know that roughly 60% of people worldwide have some degree of methylation deficiency. That's a problem, because if you don't methylate well, you form a trash byproduct called homocysteine. Homocysteine will actually shut down over 280 metabolic processes. But when we have methylated B vitamins on board, they donate a methyl group to homocysteine and they turn it into something very useful called methionine. And methionine will turn into S-adenylmethionine, as you see on the bottom right-hand side bullet point under B12. It'll turn into S-adenylmethionine, or SAMe, and SAMe helps you produce serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, melatonin, GABA. So you see how essential methylation or methylated B vitamins are. They're critical to our body, and without them, we would shut down this entire pathway that you see here on the left. So we want to make sure that we have a B complex that has not only the methylcobalamin, but the methylfolate, and ours has the quattrofolate as well as active P5P to help support those methylation pathways. As such, we take care of detoxification properly through those methylation pathways. We take care of neurotransmitter health, sleep health, cardiovascular health, normal cognitive function, helps relieve fatigue. So it helps with energy production, helps maintain normal serotonin levels, helps maintain healthy stress levels and stress management, improves the mood. And activated B complex is, I had a client tell me, a new client that I did a follow-up with, it was her first follow-up. And she said, so far, everything that you've added, she said, this one thing, and she had it in her purse. She said, I'd never go anywhere without it. She held it up and she said, this one supplement right here is hands down the best thing I've ever taken in my entire life. And that's not the first time I've heard that. I just kind of smiled and I said, I hear that a lot because that supplement truly is that awesome. So moving on, let's move on to fish oil. This is a topic, when we're talking about omega-3s, a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, because if you look at the cellular structure of every cell in your body, it's alternating molecules, basically all alternating molecules of fat and water, or lipid and water. Now, your body will use whatever lipids it has in order to produce that cell when your cells replicate. However, when you look at longevity data, and these are studies that have been done with populations of centenarians, people to live over age 100, and what they find is they have this nice ratio. No matter what part of the world they're in, they all have the same ratio of 3 parts omega-3 inside their body to 1 part omega-6, whereas the Western diet is horribly skewed, not just the opposite direction, but almost 0 parts omega-3 to 10 to 12 parts omega-6. Omega-6s typically come from your grains, and it's good to have some omega-6, but it's not good to be skewed that far to the right towards the omega-6. When you do that, you change the cellular structure of your cells and you change the cellular functioning. You lose this ability to get good nutrients in and get waste products out. So you have an unhealthy, toxic cell simply because you don't have enough omega-3 on board. So omega-3s are essential for neurological health and brain health, muscle retention, cardiovascular health, gut and digestive health, sleep hygiene, and weight loss, weight management. Research also shows that as we age, omega-3s are critically important for mood and cognition. No surprise there, because guess what the brain is made mostly up? You've heard the term fat head. Most of the brain is fat and water. So if we look at that neurological tissue being mostly fat and water, if our diet is skewed too far to the right and we have way too many omega-6s in our diet, what can we do to get more omega-3s? Well, you can eat salmon, as the picture shows here. You can eat EVOO, healthy olive oil. You can eat avocados. You can eat walnuts. So you can eat these things that help get your omega-3s up. But most people don't get enough of that in their diet, and they need to supplement. So in our line, we have Heart Health Essential Omega-3s with vitamin E. Critically important here for inflammation, enhancing mood, and eye health and joint health as we move forward. So I want to continue this line here of thinking with calming neurotransmitters of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, GABA, and melatonin. And I want to speak specifically about those adaptogens that I introduced earlier that restore balance to the body. And one formula that we have that is just off the charts amazing, another one of my go-to supplements in my quiver, so to speak. One arrow that I have in my quiver is Bliss, an amazing formula. I love what they've done with the label and the repackaging over the past year. It's just spot on. And this particular stress formula promotes relaxation, and this is key. It promotes relaxation without drowsiness, and it's beautiful because so many other products on the market will promote relaxation, but they make people sleepy. And you don't want that. You want to be able to function in your day and deal with stress. It helps do that without promoting drowsiness. It promotes mental clarity. It helps the body adapt to stress, and it maintains healthy levels of serotonin and dopamine. Why this is important with the serotonin and dopamine issue is dopamine, it acts more like a gas pedal, and serotonin acts more like the brakes on your car. So when you're under stress, you get more dopamine and less serotonin. So you get more gas pedal and less brake. So it's like a car careening out of control. And what Bliss does is it helps increase the activity of the braking system, the serotonin, so it can help say, okay, dopamine, we need to settle down here, and we need to get back into control, get back into balance. And it does it adaptogenically, which is beautiful. Bliss is constructed with the highest quality standardized botanical extracts from all over the world. Just, again, a beautiful adaptogenic product. I tell people, they say, how do you know if you need something like Bliss? Well, are you tired and wired? The bottom line is, do you wake up in the morning feeling fatigued, but all the way through your morning hours and maybe up to 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just wired for sound. And then at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you just crash. It's like you have this huge letdown. That's a good sign that your cortisol levels are way too high. They're not nosediving in the morning right when you wake up, which should happen. They're staying elevated for prolonged periods of time. Bliss is a perfect answer for this person. It helps the body adapt to stress and promote the relaxation. Again, it's made up of rhodiola, ashwagandha, and eleuthero, which are adaptogenic and help the body deal with stress and help the body with mental acuity, or the brain with mental acuity. I'm going to talk more specifically about a few of these, in that ashwagandha is made up of 3 naturally occurring bioactives that help support that healthy stress response, boost the energy levels, actually improve strength in the upper and lower body, improve sleep quality, and improve focus and reaction time when making decisions. Rhodiola is this botanical that increases capacity and decreases fatigue, increases work capacity, that is, and increases or decreases fatigue. So we believe that adaptogenically, this is one of those things that keeps us from being sleepy with this particular product while we're bringing stress down and managing stress, and it helps support learning and memory. L-theanine is in Bliss. I love L-theanine. And when you look at L-theanine, I want you to think GABA. Remember that calming hormone that magnesium elevates? L-theanine also elevates GABA, which can help bring down, in some ways, a lot of the cravings associated with stress eating. It can help with attention, concentration, and focus, and it can help manage stress and help calm that neurological system down. Passion flower. A lot of people have heard of passion flower. Passion flower has a reputation of being sedating, but in the Bliss formula, it's not sedating. It's very calming without the sedation. Important point here to point out. And the last 2, Bacopa and Siberian ginseng, really are cognitively focused. And when you look at cognition and ability to learn new things. It's called neuroplasticity. And we lose this ability over time, and stress actually makes that worse, as I've said earlier, because it can affect memory and focus and concentration. So what Bacopa does and Siberian ginseng is it helps calm that system down and helps bring cognitive performance back up. It also helps, Siberian ginseng specifically helps physical endurance. So you actually feel better, almost like a caffeine-like effect without the bad negative side effects of caffeine, especially the caffeine crash that a lot of people go through. I want to speak briefly on Turn Up, and just know that L-phenylalanine, which is in there, and taurine, the taurine increases GABA, and L-phenylalanine actually helps directly and indirectly increase tyrosine, which can help with mental alertness and energy throughout our day. I'm going to end right there because I don't want to go over the next speaker's time. So Dennis and Dee, I am going to turn it back over to you. Thank you for allowing me to come here today and speak. I've enjoyed this extremely, and we'll be talking more this afternoon on aging.